Well, hello, this is Alex from MusicSequencing.com, and today I'm going to tell you about the 5 different types of reverbs and when you might want to use them. So, real quick to start out, if you don't know what reverb is, it's a bunch of delays of the sound happening very quickly, and they blend together to give you kind of the feeling that the sound is existing longer. It sounds like this. Reverb! So, the 5 types of reverb in the order that they were invented are natural reverb, plate reverb, spring reverb, digital reverbs, and convolution reverbs. So let's start by talking about natural reverb. There are 2 ways that generally you get natural reverb on a recording. The first and most simple way is you're in a room that has reverb. You record and it goes into the microphone with all the other sounds, so you get the room sounds into the microphone. In the past, engineers, they knew that the reverb was important and sounded good. Sometimes they would record in bathrooms or certain instruments in bathrooms just to get that natural reverb sound. Eventually, they realized that they loved reverb, but they wanted to have more control of the reverb. So what they did is they built these giant rooms called echo chambers. And a lot of times they would put columns or stuff in there so the reverb would sound really good. And when they would record somewhere, like, you record in a vocal booth, then you take that signal from the vocal booth, you send it down into the basement to the echo chamber, and it plays out of a speaker, like a literal speaker, and goes around the room, and then across the room is a microphone or a couple microphones. It picks up that reverb of the vocal getting sent down, and then it goes back into the sound console and you can blend it back in. Echo chambers are super cool, but they take up a lot of space. So sometime in the 50s or 60s, I'll write it here, a company called ENT invented a new type of reverb called the plate reverb. Now the plate reverb is literally a giant metal plate that hangs from like hooks. And the way it works is you send the signal to the plate, electrically. It shakes the plate reverberates, and then you collect that signal back out on another wire, and you can blend that back in. So if you think about it, like, you hit a plate, it vibrates, right? You send sound to it, it vibrates. It's pretty ingenious. Plate reverbs, they sound very rich and creamy. They have a distinct sound. They sound awesome on lead vocals, certain percussion elements they can sound super good on. So the first one was called the EMT 140. It sounds like this. Hello, this is the EMT 140 plate reverb. Once that initial innovation of sending electricity to shake metal was known, someone thought, these plates are huge. What if we just sent the signal to like a metal spring? And thus, spring reverbs were invented. It's the same idea. You just send the signal to a spring, the spring shakes, you collect that signal, and you can blend it back in. One of the huge advantages of spring reverbs were they're super cheap to make. It's not a bunch of metal. It can be a pretty little spring, and you can get a good amount of reverb from it. They sound like this. Hello, this is a spring reverb. Let me show you this plastic microphone. Get a picture of it. If you've ever used one of these babies, that's a spring in there. It's a spring reverb. That's what's going on. Okay, remember EMT, the company who invented the plate, right? Well, they came back with a vengeance to invent a new type of reverb, the digital reverb. So, in the beginning of the video, I told you that reverb is a bunch of delays happening really quickly that blend together and give you the feeling that the sound is going on longer. Well, EMT, the smart people at EMT anyway, they realized that you could send the audio to a computer. The computer can delay it, or you can have a bunch of delays in the computer, and then send them back out, and that would make reverb. So it's a bunch of delays. Digitally, the signal gets delayed a bunch of times. That's digital reverb, and the first one was called the EMT 250. It was like $100,000 or something ridiculous when it first came out, because it was like, I don't know, 60s or 70s. I'll put the date around here. In the 80s, digital reverbs became much more affordable. Companies like Lexicon invented some great reverbs, the L224, the L480, and the prices went down as computers got cheaper. People got really good at programming digital reverbs. They could program digital reverbs to sound like specific rooms, like concert halls or studio live rooms. You can check out this video about mixing drums like Phil Collins. It'll talk about that if you're interested. And this brings us to the last type of reverb, convolution reverb. Convolution reverb is the sampler of the reverb world. I don't have an echo chamber, I don't have a plate or a spring reverb in my studio, but I've been showing you what they sound like, and that's because of my convolution reverb. So here is how a convolution reverb works. So Symphony Hall in Boston, it's acoustically one of the best sounding concert halls in the world. What people have done is they set up microphones in the concert hall and then like a speaker that plays a sine sweep. It's like whoop, bloop, the sine sweep sound, and they record that, and this creates what's called an impulse response. And you put that impulse response into a convolution reverb, and then you have the sound of that concert hall in your convolution reverb. So if you have like a violin that's completely dry, more or less, and you send it to the convolution reverb, it'll sound like it's playing in Symphony Hall, more or less, you know. And you can do the same thing for plates, springs, and digital reverbs. You can sample all of them, put them in convolution reverbs. So convolution reverb is kind of like anything, any of the 4 types of reverbs, you know, in one. Thank you for watching. I hope the information was helpful. Subscribe if you want. Like it if you can. Comment if there's anything I missed. And come by musicsequencing.com if you want to make better music. Have a great day. Peace.